Hello, welcome to Webinars Now. This is Dave Lundahl. I'm excited to be co-presenting today with uh, my colleague Greg Stuckey today. So we're going to wait just a couple minutes as I see a bunch of other people are still just logging in now. So give us about 1 to 2 minutes and we'll start the content here. Okay, we are going to get started here. So again, welcome to this third in a series of 3 webinars that we've been holding over the last couple months about how to accelerate innovation through agile techniques. I'm Dave Lundahl, Chief Research Officer, Chief Executive Officer for Insights Now. I've been working in innovation for about 25 years. I founded Insights Now in 2003. I published a book on innovation, breakthrough food product innovation through emotions research. And I'm here with my colleague, Greg Stuckey. And Greg, introduce yourself.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, I'm excited to be here today. I'm the Chief Research Officer at Insights Now, and I have the pleasure of being able to work with all of our behavioral research specialists and conducting research for the industry and pushing the industry forward to help understand how we can drive success and speed to market through new behavioral techniques.
All right. So if for those of you who are unfamiliar with Insights Now, we are a behavioral market research company. We provide insights to support these 3 areas of business. And what we mean when we say behavioral is that we look at research participants as human beings and try to generate insights into the questions of why people act the way they do so that you can better know how to move forward in knowing how to develop new products, how to position brands and plan for brands that will be growth brands, and how to develop marketing and messaging that really can help move the dial forward in your business. This approach has led Insights Now to be recognized. We are currently on the Grit 50 list as one of the most innovative companies in the world. We've won a number of recent industry awards for some of our behavioral techniques. And today we're going to be talking about innovation, that area. Before we get into this content, a bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions, please enter them on the side tab that you should see on the right side for this webinar now. And if you wish to direct them confidentially to us, you can do so. You can click confidential or if you want to address them to everyone, to all, then we will address your question at the end of the webinar today in the Q&A part. So, as a review, over the last 2 months, we really developed this sort of understanding of what is agile. And agile is comprised of iterative learning sprints rather than lengthy stages and gates. This new approach fosters innovation that is a lot more entrepreneurial. It seeks to advance the best ideas or to fail faster so you can align your risk with confidence, increasing costs as you go through different iterations associated with your innovation efforts. Also review, then this agile approach is really gaining a lot of attraction with companies. It's a pretty hot topic right now, is proving to increase market responsiveness by increasing not only speed to market, but also increasing success rates. So it's pretty exciting new stuff. In March, we presented a webinar about some techniques for the front end of innovation to help gain clarity for what your target consumer and product concept targeting moments of greatest opportunity. Then in April, we presented a webinar about how to translate through learning sprints concept into a final design specification. And if you missed either of these webinars, you can access a full recording of these webinars through our website. So today, we're going to talk about learning sprints for the commercialization of your product. So taking a design specification and bringing to market the product with your marketing plan so that it can be both manufactured and then have a go-to market plan that will be very, very successful. So I'm going to set the stage in talking about learning sprints. I'll develop some key concepts, and then Greg is going to follow up with some case studies for how these learning sprints have been applied. All right, so let's get into to my part. So the whole idea about learning sprints in the commercialization phase is really about staying focused on your go-to market strategy all the way to the finishing line. So I like this sort of picture that I found on the internet about all times keep your eyes on the prize. Any of you have dogs that love to go fetch, you can probably relate to that. Dogs are definitely focused and will keep their eyes on the prize, in this case, the tennis ball in the water, at all costs. Just amazing. But that is really, I think, a good metaphor to a couple things. Number one is stay focused so you don't lose your product cues that you developed in the design, which really signal what the brand is promising, and don't alienate your brand fans with your go-to market strategy. Secondly, is do disrupt to create new brand fans, and so that you can then grow your brand through your product rollout and your go-to market strategy. So that's what I'm going to really talk about, is really focuses on these do's and don'ts. Now, one of the best examples of a failure in commercialization that Greg and I have been a party of is one that was a project that was designed for targeting a after school kids snacking moment. And we developed the product and the packaging through learning sprints. We applied some co-creation and some co-design sessions to help translate the proposition into this full design spec. And it was a really fantastic product. We're really excited about it. However, this product was sort of the go-to market strategy was to launch this product initially through Walmart, and Walmart had very specific pricing guidelines. And after we developed the product, the R&D team had to go through a rationalization process. That is, they had to look at how to develop the product and the packaging so that it would fit into cost parameters so that you could make money within the design pricing guidelines that Walmart had established. Unfortunately, this process ended up with significant changes in the product and packaging where key product cues that signaled the promise were lost. And as a result, this product never made it to market. So it really it was disappointing for us because we put a lot of work into it. But nonetheless, that is a typical story. Now, another way to think about sort of this idea of, um, of understanding how to build brands through the commercialization process is the concept of on ramps and off ramps for looking at consumers. And this leads to sort of the whole idea of what is and what is not disruption. And so what I mean by this is on ramps, a good example of ramp is now the classic example of unintentionally creating off ramps as trick cereal. And I'm sure many of you have read about this or heard about this. So I think we presented this case study as part of a webinar past this last November. And Trix try to create a more clean label type of product with no fructose corn syrup, no artificial colors, no artificial sweeteners, and so on. And in doing so, though, the brand fans rejected this product. And you can see the visual cues, the left versus the right. You see on the left side here of the product, much more vibrant colors. People instantly saw that something had changed in this product and it was no longer the same. So the brand fans rejected it. And so you had a tremendous amount of alienation, and it forced General Mills to put the old Trix product back on the shelf. Now, a great example on the flip side is the recent success story of Jell-O, where the brand needed to disrupt the marketplace to bring on new brand fans without alienating others. So what they did is they developed the Simply Good line under the Jell-O brand. Now, this new line does not replace the old line, so it was just a new line, and it doesn't have really sufficient clean label to make it in the store shelves of, say, Whole Foods. Yet it was good enough in terms of clean enough for their target markets. And it has really been a great step forward for Kraft Heinz in revitalizing this brand. So they did it by coming out with new packaging, positioning the product to have no artificial flavors, dyes, or preservatives. Now, the key to developing a great go-to-market strategy that maintains your product cues, doesn't alienate, and creates on-ramps is to think behaviorally. And this starts with what we like to call this 4.6-second rule. And it's all about habits. And it's realizing that the average time it takes for a consumer to grab a product who's going through, let's say, a grocery store, is about 4.6 seconds, which is really fast, meaning that most purchases are habitual. They're very routine. They're driven and reinforced by repeat behavior, doing the same things over and over again. So if you're in developing a successful commercialization strategy that is going to utilize learning sprints, it's really important to understand how to break habits to create more on-ramps without disrupting existing habits that would create off-ramps. So all ramps, all on-ramps, and off-ramps for that matter can be associated with various points of disruption of what we call the habit flywheel. And I'm going to go through this a little bit so you can see what this is all about. So first of all, the habit flywheel is really centered on moments of product use, the context by which impacts what people do behaviorally. Second, so a cue, usually an environmental cue, typically triggers some sort of routine, some way in which people utilize products. And this routine tends to be like a sequence of events, tasks, how you do things, and so on and so forth. Um, and then that really defines what is the consideration set for people to select a product that fits with that routine. And then a product itself has various signals and functionality and so how it really works for people that really kind of, when products are used, creates a reward that is benefits that have been recognized and realized, and so on and so forth. And then to complete this as a flywheel, that means as this flywheel goes faster and faster around, you get more established habits. You need to associate the reward, and this is usually done through marketing and messaging and advertising, associate the reward back to the initial cue that triggers the routine. Now, this whole idea of a habit flywheel is key, we believe, to developing a go-to-market strategy that is very behavioral focused. Okay, so it's something that really does complete the loop all the way around through repeat use, and so that you can establish these new habits that are on ramps for your clients and to create more brand fans. So how you apply the habit flywheel is by identifying five possible points of five possible points of disruption. The first is to develop a plan that you actually change the context or the cue. So you create a new cue, like you open a bottle up and it makes a sound. It's a cue. Or you change the routine. This is an example of it is what Keurig did in changing the routine for making coffee or other very hot product drinks or cold product drinks. To improve the product, you build cues into it when you design the product, so it signals the benefits, and then you improve the reward, so people realize the benefits. It's a reward. And then last, through marketing and various other ways, you associate the reward back to the cue and you complete the cycle. So these are points of on-ramps or ways to create on-ramps through a strategy, but it also can be an off-ramp, whereas if the reward is not recognized, the product cues are eliminated. If it it makes changes the routine in a negative way, or other things, it can really create a disruption, so you get an off-ramp rather than an on-ramp. So from a research perspective, there is insights to be had in developing your go-to-market strategy at such as price sensitivity, where you actually look at what is your true competitive context, and Greg's going to talk about this a bit. And then secondly, product testing, and so you understand you're not going to alienate your consumers, and to also ensure through the rationalization process, such as the example I gave you earlier, so you don't rationalize away key product cues. Okay. Also, in the design of creative for your ad, to understand what are your rewards and to have it cycle back to a cue is really important. And also add placement to ensure that it's relevant, so that it does trigger through cues and some way of creating that, understanding what that cue is, what the routine. And so this is really important in building your brand and to what that strategy is in your marketing communications. Now, what does this have to do back to learning sprints? So in the iterative stages, okay, as you stage your product rollout, there is opportunity to become much more agile. And so if you start with your product, your positioning, and your sort of initial marketing plan going into the commercialization process, you can actually then develop a strategy by really just you applying the habit flywheel, doing your rationalization, alienation, do your homework, do the ad creative and placement, become inspired from your research, and then that can lead to then through the test marking iterations to a better, and then some sort of outcome of that of trial, repeat, and so on. So you can then over time, then through the next iteration, as you go expand to a broader test market, iteratively, you can then take your learnings and adjust on the fly. And that is a tremendous way to create this loop so you're constantly learning and adjusting. Very agile and so on and so forth. So keeping your eye on the prize, using this behavior lens, ensure that you're not going to lose product cues and you're not going to alienate, and you're going to develop a really great, inspiring ads that are going to really drive the flywheel forward. Okay, so now Greg is going to go through some case studies here and to show how this agile approach has been applied. And I'm going to give Greg here the control. So
excellent.
I'm working on it.
Thanks, Dave. Yes, I'm excited about the habit flywheel and how it applies through all of these case studies, and how we can drive our successes in market by really taking a closer look at how we interconnect the marketplace as to the people's behavior as well. All right. I'm not sure I have control yet, Dave. There we go.
Yeah,
all right.
You got it.
Excellent. So let's first talk about the front end of the types of research that we would be doing as we're doing our commercialization sprint. So the first piece, we're going to be talking about rationalization, alienation, price sensitivity, and competitive context components, all rolled into pieces of research that really are going to be driving you forward. So the first example I'm going to be talking about today is based on Nesquik's big sugar reduction push that they've been going on for quite a while. The cover shot from Fortune magazine back a year ago saying Nestle's putting the bunny on a diet. And Nesquik has been known for a long time to be something that is based on a nutritional breakfast product. 45% of all our uses are at breakfast. And it's the 7 essential vitamins and minerals that have been the hallmark, if you will, of why the product has been believed to be a nutritional, good-tasting product. Well, as the industry and the market around nutrition has been changing very, very rapidly, everybody knows, and I'm sure you know in your organization, you're facing tremendous amount of sugar-based concerns. So a product like this, which has a high sugar value, now all of a sudden is being viewed as not nutritional at all, and in fact, getting fewer and fewer people believing it's a product that is good for you in any way. So Nesquik, then recognizing that this is a key important part of what's happening in the marketplace, is saying for our brand, we need to reduce the sugar out so that we can stay true to what we believe the core of the brand values are and the brand pillars are. So initial focus on this is to make sure when you're doing your research that you understand exactly what you're keeping your eye on as far as value. So a lot of times in the commercialization sprint, we kind of lose our way in research, and we end up focusing just on, are people going to buy this, yes or no? And we start going away from understanding, well, what is it that they're buying? What is the core motivation in the moment that's driving people to use this brand and this product? And what is that core brand pillar? And here it's that nutritional goodness for Nestle. So making sure that you're not just asking, hey, does this still taste good? Does this still is this still a product that you would buy? Making sure that you're focused on, does this actually still be perceived as delivering on the core value of the product? Because you may still buy it, but if you're slowly eroding the value of the product, then you're going to start losing to competitors over time. So the first piece is don't lose your product cues. So make sure the full production version stays true to those product cues, which signal the rewards you want And also, don't forget about the cues you have to avoid. Up to this point in all your learning sprints, you've been trying to identify, well, what are the most important cues to build? How are we going to build those out correctly? And you're keeping those cues that you want to avoid off to the side. And often what happens is you come into the commercialization sprint and the communication of the cues that you're trying to avoid get lost because now you have a spec and you're just trying to produce against that spec and you forget about the things that you need to avoid. So in this case, staying true to the product cues which signal delicious and nutritious and avoiding the cues which distract from the brand promise would be the core. So Nestle, as they built out this new product, they put a 25% less sugar product on the market. And extensive research here was that there was an overwhelming preference towards the reduced sugar over the full sugar product. And even if you're focusing in here still on key cues, looking at sweetness, because we know it's going to change. It's not like we're going to hide this flavor change from the marketplace, but being able to promote, hey, 88% of Nesquik consumers said the sweetness level was just right. So even though the product is being reduced in sugar, having a flavor profile that still delivers that, and making sure that the production versions of this still deliver on what the prototypes were doing as well. The second piece is not disrupting your brand fans within the scope of this. So just because you've built a product that fits the sensory parameters and research parameters doesn't mean you're going to not alienate people. And in fact, going into a commercialization strategy where you're doing a product change for an existing brand, you should automatically assume you will be alienating somebody. The question is, how big of a percentage are you going to alienate, and who are you going to alienate? So here's one of my favorite quotes that a brand fan posted on Nestle's page, which was, "Hey, has anyone else noticed the change? It's now reddish in color, dissolves too well, and tastes like Ovaltine." Well, a lot of people responded back to the Ovaltine comment going, "Hey, well, I don't really think it's that bad. Maybe it's a little less chocolatey, but the flavor's still really solid. They really like it." But a lot of people said, yeah, we did notice the dissolving thing too. So here's an example of a characteristic that going into it, you might have thought, well, this is a new production method, and we can fix something that we thought maybe was a flaw in the product, which was it doesn't really dissolve very well, leaves little lumps. But all of a sudden to find out that there's actually a subset of the population that actually really likes those lumps. In fact, that dissolving too quickly is actually a problem. The reddish color being another cue. Does that reddish color, is it just a change, or does it take away from the perception of nutrition, or maybe it doesn't add to the perception of nutrition? These are important things to make sure you keep your eye on as you go to production, because you can get small changes in the texture and the sensory properties and other aspects of the product, which may be avoid cues that you didn't know you were going to have to deal with when you were in the ramp-up mode. Okay, so when you go through alienation testing, we always break people into 4 groups when we do alienation testing. The first group is the contented group, and this is a group that detect the product change, but they really like the new one. So this is the group that Nestle was talking about. The majority of people preferred the new product. There's the unaware or indifferent group of people. These are the people that didn't even notice there was a change. And there's a lot of those out in the world that, we often in the research field get very, very sensitive to small differences in products because we deal with them all the time. A lot of consumers don't. There's always a group of people out there just unaware. And even if they do recognize it as a change, they don't care. It's not something that is really meaningful to them from a preference standpoint. Or from the belief that it doesn't deliver as well. Then there's 2 groups that are the vulnerable and the alienated group. The alienated is pretty obvious. These are the people that see the change and they hate it. And then there's another group, though, that you should pay attention to, which are the vulnerable group. They really don't prefer the new product, but they're going to keep buying it. It's not going to change their buying behavior. However, what's happened is you've disrupted these people just a little bit, and that's opening the door for them to look at other products, other alternative products for this particular moment of their life. So while they're not truly going to be alienated right off the bat, they probably will over time start exploring other products, and you're going to lose a little share and maybe even some fans if some of your competitors come in with a really strong product. So you're looking for alienation. You're comparing the people who love the control, love the current. You're also going to do diagnostics. So it's important when you're doing the alienation work here is to add in those diagnostic elements so that if you're getting some alienation, you can dig into why those people are alienated. It might be something like that reddish color that you could actually quickly and easily fix. So you want to make sure you haven't disrupted people to the point where you're going to lose your share. And then the third piece of this sprint aspect is to really make sure that your price value equation hasn't changed. As you change the formulations of products, oftentimes you're hoping to drive more ROI. If you're making the product a little bit cheaper and the consumers notice just a little bit, it may be not something that's really overt and obvious to them. But if you don't look at your price value equation and look at price sensitivity, you might not get a full clean picture of that you're having slight small erodes in your brand. The other piece is that as you change things dramatically, for instance, a dramatic reduction in sugar, the Trix example where you dramatically change the positioning of the product, you may come up against brand new competitors. So now because you're in a new competitive set, maybe the price value equation changes. So for instance, I always thought to myself, and I don't know if it's true, but I always thought, hey, when Trix made that change, I was thinking, boy, I bet they compete against yogurt more often now. And how does that product price against a box of Trix? And understanding that dynamic and that context in those competitive sets is going to help you better understand whether your price value has changed. Now, within this, when we do price sensitivity, we take a modified Van Westendorp approach to this, where we're asking the people to tell us, once we put them in context, in mindset of that moment, what price would you consider buying, and where it's expensive, inexpensive, et cetera, so forth. And then a really, really important one is this very last one on the list, which is at what price point would it be so cheap you'd question its quality? And when you start to focus on quality questions, especially in the commercialization process, where it's really common for you to be moving to the market with some type of a price reduction or some type of a promotion to get your people excited, we look at these price ranges to understand the value, but more importantly, we look at this too cheap curve down here. And notice that while the price sensitivity may say, hey, $1.96 or right around $2 is a valuable proposition for you, you can stay in that range. If you look at the too cheap curve where people are starting to question the quality of your brand, right around $2, it jumps from 5% of the people questioning the quality to 25% of the people questioning the quality. And that's probably not a jump that you should be associating with your product. So if Nesquik comes out with a product that is 25% reduced sugar and they drop the price point to drive trial, and they don't understand that this is a serious watch out, then your launch of the product is going to generate a off ramp here. It's going to make people say, well, yeah, they reduced the sugar, it must not be very good. They got it on sale so much that it probably tastes like crap. Right? They don't even know, they haven't even tried it, but you lose trial when you get into this area, and you lose brand equity when you go into this area. So it's something to really watch when you're looking at quality. Another piece is to look at your optimal price points and understand at what price point are you going to generate the greatest reach with this, and then at what price point you're going to get the greatest ROI. Since almost all of our commercialization sprints where you're making modifications to products are focused on an ROI, not coming back to this and not knowing that, especially if you're communicating a change to the consumer, new, improved, modified, reduced, any of those things, you actually may be able to capitalize on a new price point, which will drive your ROI higher. So keeping that all together and all focused in one component of your sprint is going to allow you to iterate very, very quickly. And as you do your rolling launches, you can keep iterating on that process to make sure that in different markets or with different target areas, that you are constantly improving and making that product as successful as possible. Now, the other piece of this area is the ad creative and placement. And I would argue this is probably the most challenging aspect of being an agile company. And the reason being is that it's the ad and the creative agencies are almost always third party to the brand. And these people really like to have their own ownership. They tend not to be like told what to do very much. And so there's a lot of 1 and 2 and 3 person handoffs before it actually gets to the team building the ads. In fact, it's not uncommon for me to talk to brand and even especially R&D teams who where I've seen an ad come on TV for a product they recently were working on, and I asked them if they've seen the ad, and they say no, they weren't even aware it was being advertised yet. However, if you really want to have a good agile strategy, you want to protect all the hard work that you put into understanding what cues are important, what behaviors are important, what rewards you're driving for in order to make this as successful as possible. So the example we got here is with fruit chillers. Now, the fruit chillers product line came out at a time when there was really not any fruit-based popsicles or frozen treats out there and available in this fashion. And their whole premise, their inspiration was real fruit rather than just flavored water on the market. And the R&D team focused heavily on what kind of cues would signal real fruit flavor. And one of the things that was central to this whole process was the texture that the ice crystals had when you're using real fruit juice rather than the flavored water mix as a key signal of that benefit. So the perception of real fruit wasn't just a flavor thing, it was a texture thing as well. So they put a lot of work into building that. And then when they got to the commercialization process, they actually had to build new lines, right, to make sure that this manufacturing was building the nice, small, little ice crystals that communicated the fruit pulp type textures that got people excited that these were real fruit. So the challenge here, though, was when the advertising came out, the first ad that came out, we had this great sequence. It was a nice, cute commercial of kids having the fruit chiller and playing off that chiller name. Bam, frozen brain freeze all the way. And it was a cute ad. However, the challenge here was advertising inadvertently introduced brain freeze as a reward that this product would deliver. And all the time that R&D spent working to eliminate brain freeze because of the small crystal size was just thrown out the window. And so now this product, while designed well and produced against the target, because of the advertising set a different focus on a different part of the reward mechanism or introduced a new reward, which ended up being a punishment here, the product didn't meet expectations. And people were disappointed that it didn't give brain freeze. Well, it would have been a whole lot easier if they knew brain freeze was the thing they wanted. That was a whole lot easier to build from an R&D standpoint than the more challenging no brain freeze scenario. So we've got to be very conscientious when we're working with the launch strategy and the commercialization strategy to make sure that we're communicating not just here's the product and here's the product brief to the ad agencies, but also here's the key behaviors, here's the routines, here's what the product's about, here's the rewards, and making sure we say here's the rewards that it should focus on, and here's the rewards or punishments you have to avoid. Don't communicate these things. We worked hard to eliminate them, so don't accidentally introduce them. So it's a matter of putting those two pieces together and making sure your communication is nice and strong. All right. So this means if you go back to the flywheel, that you got to keep your eye on the prize. And whether you're building the product and maintaining your cues and signals, or that you're working with the ad or building any sort of Marcom support documentation and or building the ads yourself, if you're doing that, that you've kept your eye on the prize the whole time, that you've understood the moment, the cues trigger the routine, the product, and the sensory cues that are signaling those rewards both that you want as well as those you want to avoid. And then finally, it's making sure that that reward that those consumers are getting are connected back to whatever cue is start triggering that behavior to begin with. And if the advertisements are doing that in a relevant way for consumers, it will develop faster and faster trial and repeat process for them. Especially the repeat will then increase. All right. Dave, back to you.
Sure. I'm going to. Great. So, if we kind of look through the kind of a summary here of what we talked about today, it's just, I'm going to re-emphasize what Greg said. The key to successful commercialization sprints is to do not lose your product cues. Don't disrupt your brand fans. Disrupt to start new habits, create new on ramps for consumers through your go to market strategy. Use research to develop your go to market strategy and keep your eye on the prize at all times so that as you go through the iterative stages of your rollout strategy, you continually learn as you go through each sort of stage of your rollout from initial test market and scaling it up, whether it's on a national basis or even globally. Continually learn so that you can be effective in creating those on ramps without alienating people and off ramps. So it's a great strategy. It completes this whole idea of agile methods, which are revolutionizing how companies are being able to take products from idea all the way to the marketplace successfully, to be much more entrepreneurial, much more sort of aligning your risk with the various agile iterations, and so that you can be effective to throw out the ideas that aren't working, but continually learn and revise and refine through this agile approach, things that have merit so that you can really be more effective. So it's a really exciting area. So now is the time to kind of go back to sort of some questions. I know that a lot of you do have various different questions. And so let's go through a Q&A here. The very first one I see here is, so how quickly can alienation testing be done? Okay, so with this in this agile. So Greg, since anything you want to add?
So, alienation testing is actually a really quick approach because you're really trying to put in the commercialization process, you're putting a full package, product production package in front of people in their home in the use moment. So it's actually a fairly quick and iterative part of the research process here. It's a quick in-home test. The longest part of this process is just making sure that you have your products prepped and ready to go. And but the testing is pretty quick. You have products that are being used in high frequency, it goes really fast. If it's low frequency, you just have to set up the context to be able to get people to use it more quickly. But it is something that you do. And the other thing about it is that, I think a lot of people look at alienation testing as its own little slice, its own little separate piece of research. But consider that the alienation testing also within the scope of that, you can be asking those same consumers a lot more questions. And you can even be incorporating the creative team and the ad team to do additional Q&A with them and add more color and qualitative, get more in the moment views of product use, et cetera, so forth. So there's a lot of really good agile pieces and hybridization of that approach that you can do in a fairly quick fashion.
Yeah, let me add to that, and I'm going to take, instead of just looking at the alienation, It's really the flip
Hmm.
side is the on ramp. So your
Yes.
lead adopters, those initial people that actually buy your product and start creating new habits in the early stages of your go-to-market strategy as you roll this product out, is a gold mine of information as, let's say, in a small test market, to learn from those consumers to be able to adjust your strategy. I cannot emphasize enough how this sort of the gold mine of insights that can lead to sort of adjusting through an agile approach your go-to-market strategy is so important.
That's good. We got
So
one more question I see coming in here. Any suggestions for working with creatives? That's a good one. It's a tough area, and I'm going to go back to the key premise that we set this on, which is keeping your eye on the prize. I think the thing is that I see most often is people, especially in the R&D side of the business, often get as soon as they're finished with the product, they lose track because there's such a big gap usually of a month or 2 months, sometimes even more, of we've finished the product, it's in production, and now the other team is taking it on. But I think keeping your eye on the prize, keeping everybody on the team, especially if you're working in agile, focused on what really matters and what the product was designed around. So if you can stay focused on moments and cues and those rewards, then I think that you will do a whole lot better in terms of communication to the creatives, because you're not telling them what they do and don't have to do. You're just focusing them on what's most important, and being able to also give them things that they should avoid. And knowing what to avoid is actually a pretty cool thing for most creatives. I don't think they often get it, and they think they get excited about hearing new information.
great, great. All right. Well, with that, sort of last a couple things here before we sign off for the day is that really appreciate all of you that are vlogging to watch this episode. Remember that this session is recorded, and so that if you want to pass on any of this content to your coworkers or anyone else you think that this could be of value to, please do. We would like to really continue the conversation. And if you have any comments about this webinar series, whether it's just these 3 in a row on Agile, if there's anything you want to make commentary, we would love to hear from you. Just give Greg or I or anyone else that you have contact with at Insights Now a call or send us an email. We'd be glad to dialogue, and because we're looking for topics, we're also looking for ways in which we can improve the value of this webinar series. And kind of with that, let's look ahead. So next month, this is the first Thursday in June, we're going to be really talking about some insights that we have been generating. I think some of you may know we've been doing a tremendous amount of research into this area of how to score ingredients so that you know how to design, develop products that are perceived to be a more cleaner label, a more cleaner product. So the question is sea salt or sodium chloride, does it matter if you were to use one or the other in terms of a product design? And there's a lot of other questions that we're now able to gain insights into, and providing some access to some super new ways of interactive tools that people can gain access to really address specific problems, overcome specific challenges to certain brands or product lines. So that is it. Really appreciate so much everybody that's logging in and listening to us today. Again, we'd love to have feedback from you to see if this webinar series is valuable and for you. So and give us a call or give us an email with your comments. Okay, Greg.
Thank you,
anything
everybody.
wanna- Yep.
Yep.
All right.
Keep your eye on the prize, everybody.
All right. Bye.